Good morning, fish keepers. Cam here from the fishroom.co.nz. We've done it. We've made it to another Friday. And on the other end of this Friday is another public holiday, which is good times. So let's be happy with all this. Let's do coffee. That is a good coffee. I'm very happy with that. I'm going to enjoy every single mouthful of this. Oh, good. All right. So back here we have Mr. John. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well, thanks. How are you?
Good. Living the dream, mate. Living the dream.
Nothing else for it.
Cool. So before we get too deep into what we were going to talk about today, I've got a couple of things I just need to quickly run through. So we'll just run through that, and then we can get into what we were going to talk about.
Okay.
Cool. So first and foremost, as I mentioned before, it's a public holiday coming up on a Tuesday. So because it's a public holiday in the middle of the week, it's going to play absolute havoc on pretty much everything when it comes to freight for the week. So first and foremost, Anzac Day, we're going to be closed the entire day. So we're not going to open after 1 o'clock. So we'll be closed all day long. For some weird reason, I don't know why we let everything open at 1 o'clock on Anzac Day. I think it should just be closed the entire day. But anyway, Anzac Day, we are totally closing the retail shops. So there'll be nobody here. So enjoy some other activities. But with it being Tuesday, it's going to pay havoc on all of the freighting stuff. So normally I order my plants on a Monday to get delivered on a Tuesday and or Wednesday. Suppliers have already said they won't be sending stuff on a Monday because the Tuesday delay, things get stuck in transit, which means they won't be sending stuff to Wednesday, which means things won't turn up till Thursday, possibly Friday. Best case scenario, things turn up on Thursday, get sent out Thursday afternoon, arrives to everybody on the Friday. That's a good time. Sends out on Thursday, gets stuck in transit, doesn't arrive until the Monday or the Tuesday the following week. That's not a good time. So I think we'll probably end up anything perishable not sending, particularly plants, that's what I'm mainly talking about, until the week after. When we get back to business like normal on Wednesday, things like fish and frozens and stuff like that can be sent. And any of the plants we do have in stock, I will send as well. But anything we've had to order in, I'll probably hold back to the week after. I knew that this week coming up was going to be a public holiday in the middle of it, so I did over-order on some of the more popular selling plants. So some of the orders that have come through this week have been able to get out this week, so there's some that won't be delayed. So I've done what I can in advance for that. But there'll definitely be some that will have to have a bit of a delay just for the sake of them not basically being destroyed in potentially 4 or 5 days with the transit. So that's where we're at with that. So yeah, and good morning to everybody who has jumped up on the chat. Cam, Stacey, NZ, Aquarist,
Red.
Yeah, Red. Sorry, it just popped up before it went away. Yeah, it looks like Cam forgot to plan for Anzac Day.
All the good regulars.
Yeah, cool. So next thing is we've had a lot of progress out the back here. So John will be happy there's been some progress on the big Frontosa tank.
Yeah, it's about time.
Yeah, so I had a friend of mine come in yesterday who is far more handy with doing anything than I am. Happens to be a builder, so he's multiple abilities on things and has all the tools and everything. So the hole that was in the roof he sealed off. I had nothing to do with that. I'm not getting on a cherry picker. So he sealed that off. So the room itself was a lot warmer now. We installed a couple more stands, which has now given us the capacity of 3 more 3-foot tanks and about 6 or 7 small sort of 2-foot breeding type size tanks. So that's increased that quite nicely. And then we also pulled apart the Frontosa tank, the 2.5 meter tank. So that's all sitting as glass pieces now, which I'm happy with. So I'll be able to go through that over the next couple of weeks and clean that all up, get it all tidy, get it all sorted to go. So we brought the stand in here. I know you can't see it, but it's right there and it's already beginning to dominate the room. I sent John a video prior to this, exactly how stuffed this room is at the moment, full of things everywhere. But yeah, so the stand is right there, and fingers crossed my measurements are correct and everything else is going to work in behind us as well. So there's been a bit of progress here, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, The stand looks pretty good, and if judging by the size of the stand, it's getting me even more excited for this tank cam.
Oh, it's massive. It is ginormous. So I'll actually rephrase it. The tank that I pulled apart is not going to be for the front toes. The one behind me is going to be, which is a lot higher based, which I think they'll appreciate, having that ability to swim upwards a little bit more. That one I was looking at doing clown loaches, but yeah, they're both really big tanks, so it's going to be a good time. So it's happy day. And yes, I'm absolutely the definition of pay someone else type of do it. I do not do handy stuff whatsoever. I'm terrible at it, and I'm okay living with that. Sometimes I keep looking for a left-handed screwdriver because I'm left-handed. We'll put it that way. Cool. Yeah. Come and stop in and say g'day. That'll be fantastic. Next week, our guest is Dan from Dan's Fish. So that will be a good time. I'm quite looking forward to that. I'll confirm that with him via email this afternoon, but we've been in communication over the last couple of weeks, and we should be still good to go for that. So I'm looking forward to that. He's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to all things fish and all things aquatics. So that'll be a really good time to hear about his journey and how he got involved in the hobby and how he's turned his hobby into a business and that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
I'm looking forward to that one. Seems like a really, really nice guy. So it should be a nice wee chat we're going to have with him. Also, unfortunately, there's no podcast this week, no Aquarium Frenzy podcast. My editing software is still being useless, and it's really starting to frustrate me, and I haven't had a chance to find a better one yet, but I will continue to look for that. So I'm sorry about that. However, the Three Idiots podcast has had another release this week. So we talked all things aquariums, all things live bearers. So you can check that out on Spotify, or you can check it out on YouTube as well under the Three Idiots Talk Aquariums. So that was quite a fun conversation. Ryan did his normal stuff. I hate live bearers. They're not cichlids, but it's always a fun time. So yeah. And the last thing that I have got really filled my heart with happiness is yesterday in the shop, one of my regular customers who is new to fish came in and he was talking about going blackwater, which excited me significantly. But that's not actually what the significant excitement was. Another couple came in who are also relatively new into fish. They're picking up some fish, so I was catching them. And they both sort of merged into the shop and started talking. And I could just overhear all of them were really excited about keeping fish and how much they were enjoying it. And, getting new species of fish and doing the research and how much they were loving being involved in the hobby. And I thought that was just absolutely fantastic that these people who would never have likely have met before just happen to stumble into the shop together, follow or do a hobby together that, you'd never know if they didn't meet each other, and they just managed to have this massive conversation about how much they're enjoying aquariums and tropical fish. And that to me is what this hobby's all about, having fun and just enjoying it and being just enthralled with everything you do. So I thought that was, I really enjoyed that little bit yesterday. So I thought that was really cool.
To be able to see that taking place as well.
Yeah.
And then you drop your response.
Just a simple of what fish you're getting. Oh, I looked at them; they're really cool. Or just that little beginning of the conversation. They just went on to talk for about 5 minutes or so about basically how much they love aquariums. So I thought that was fantastic.
Fast forward 10 years, and they'll bump into each other again, and they'll not talk to each other in case one of them gets to find out what the other one's trying to breed. And
Let's hope that that sort of thing stops happening, because that's not the way that the hobby's going to grow. And
the hobby won't be around for long if that was the case. Yeah, so
totally understand that. So.
The minority of people that's like that.
Yeah, cool. So that's all I've got as far as my formal stuff. Just a quick reminder: we'll be basically closed on Anzac Day, which is Tuesday, for the entire day, and there'll probably be a few delays when it comes to some of the plant orders that are going out this week. So just a wee reminder for that. So yeah, I guess we can get into our topic that we were kind of umming and ahhing. So John and I have been speaking during the week, and we were thinking that for the weeks that we don't have a guest on, it might be a good idea to basically have a topic for us to talk about. Nothing too strenuous or stressful, but just so it's not me and him just randomly blabbering along, particularly me just randomly ranting about nothing. So, yeah.
Yeah. So on that note, if anybody has any subjects you want us to kind of focus on one of these weeks, just let us know.
Yeah. Don't want to go too in depth and too technical or anything like that. Just keep it nice and easy going and stuff like that. But just keep everything on topic, so to speak. So yeah.
Not 2 hands.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So this week's topic, we just thought we would keep it to basically the process of the fish that come into the shop and the way they move through the shop and out the other end, so to speak, as well as sort of the process of what we're trying to achieve out the back. It was a bit of a whim in a moment. We sort of figured it out pretty quickly, so that's what we're going to go with.
Mm-hmm.
So for those that don't know, we've got out the back behind me, there's a really big room that's got a few aquariums in it. About half of them are used for anything incoming. So stock that gets purchased from either breeders, like hobbyists and stuff like that, or from wholesalers. And so when they make it into the shop, I hold them back for a minimum of, there you go, what is a quarantine room? Nice and simple. We'll hold them back for a couple of weeks. So every tank is individually filtered. They're on their own heating system and all that sort of stuff. So over that 2-week period, I'm out there several times a day watching the fish, making sure there's no disease on them, making sure they're all eating, making sure they're all putting on weight and stuff like that. So in my time of getting fish from wholesale and then on selling them, I found that the first 10 or so days is the time that the fish are the most vulnerable to picking up disease or being stressed and stop eating and things like that. So
is there any particular disease that's more common with fish that just come in?
White spot's fairly common. It's a stress-related one. I don't actually know what the official name is, but like wasting disease or that sort of shimmering disease is fairly common in things like mollies and swordtails and guppies. So they're probably quite common in live bearers.
Yeah.
And again, I put a lot of that down to stress as well. That's what I believe most of this is caused by. It's pretty hard to quantify stress to prove that's what it is, but I believe that is what it is.
Well, stress reduces the immune system, doesn't it? And that opens them up to whatever's present in the water.
Yeah. So like fish have been in big vats, they're caught, they're bagged, they're chucked in a box, they're sent on a plane, they land in New Zealand, they go into a 6-week, I think, quarantine state at one of the few facilities that hold them. They go through that 6 weeks. From that 6-week period, they then get pushed into shops, again, bagged, boxed, chucked in. So that, they could be in 3 or 4 different types of water in the space of a very short period of time.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And everyone's water is different and that kind of stuff. So I think that's a contributor to a lot of the stress when they come in.
They probably won't be eating anywhere near as much as they should during that time either.
Yeah.
Close everything down.
Yeah. So that's part of the holding process, is to just try and minimize that amount of stress that they're going in, so they're a bit more settled when they get here. 2 weeks is kind of the minimum, but often we're sitting sort of 3 or 4 weeks, like cardinal tetras, for example, or basically a minimum of 4 weeks. They seem to feel like they just take a little bit longer sometimes to show any issues, so I hold on to a bit longer. Neons are another one. I find that the more work and the more effort I put into them in the back room, the better they are when they get to the front sales room.
Yeah.
So
is a quarantine room something that all fish shops will do as standard? Is it required or?
No, it's not required, and I don't know very many that do them.
Okay.
I know the local pet shop that way from me. I believe they do have one. I don't know how often they use it or their process for using it, but I do know they have some tanks at the back that they put fish in. And I know my local chain store also has that, but I think they don't use it for incoming. I think they use it if something gets sick for more of a hospital type scenario for things that they can treat that's not treatable in the tank or in the sort of thing. So.
The 2 shops out my way, they've got tanks, and obviously each tank's individual, so they'll dump new fish in their designated tank straight away, but they'll close that tank off so that I put a sticker up saying that they're quarantined, so you can't get them until they're ready. So it's the same process, but it's just more visible. Whereas you're lucky you've got that space, you can really strip back. You don't need to worry about the tank looking good. You can just get down to the business and focus on what's important, I suppose.
Yeah. I also know there is a shop up in the North Island that quarantine their incoming fish as well. I don't know many that do. I think the theory is they've been quarantined via the importer, so I shouldn't have to, is one of the theories. And then there's people that just haven't been able to just have the room to set them up and stuff like that. So I think that's part and parcel of it. It'd be good if more did do that. But I think the mindset of a lot of other store owners is, I've bought this piece of stock, I want to sell it as soon as it's available, as opposed to I'm trying to just do the best that I can prior to selling it. That's kind of where my thoughts are on that, and each to their own. But I'm more comfortable doing it with us out the back for a few weeks for that.
In that experience, I've bought fish once in the past of somebody who got them from the importer and drove them up north and dropped them off at your house. It was a big mistake. No quarantine whatsoever, and the fish was dead within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But the other fish, you don't have that problem unless you're out of luck, and sometimes it happens. But I'd rather buy a stable and settled down fish that maybe costs a bit more, or I need to wait for, than bosh it into your tank.
Definitely. So there's a couple of reasons that we do it. One, a major one for me is like our sales tank is all on the one loop. So we've got really big UV filters on it. So the 18 tanks are divided into 2 separate systems. So as soon as that water gets through the UV system, most pathogens die off anyway, things like white spot and that sort of thing. So like if we do have white spot in one tank, it generally gets isolated into that one tank, which is really helpful. But it was a case of, I don't want to be passing one disease to another through the tank system, because that's going to be an absolutely logistical nightmare for me to be able to try and maintain running my business and selling fish. But also the other part of it is trying to make sure that the fish that we're selling is of a really good standard, a nice quality, a little bit bigger, because sometimes they come in quite small. So a little bit bigger, a little more colourful, and I've had the ability to pump nutrition into them via lots of brine shrimp, lots of rapashi, lots of gutload, like loaded up rapashi with extra algae base to it, spirulinas, garlic, and all that kind of stuff to really, really make them explode and be really comfortable, really happy, and just the best quality fish that I can possibly push out to the people that are coming through. Fish diet is what it is. That's part and parcel of it. But very seldomly will we now have people come back and say, I bought this off you, and a week later it died, which is the end result. I don't want people coming back buying fish because their fish are dying on them. I want people coming back because they've spotted a fish that they really like, and they've worked out they can keep it in the aquarium, or they've set up a new aquarium for it because they really, really wanted these fish, and that's them building on their hobby. So that's the theory behind all of that. So
Okay. Do some fish require longer quarantine periods than others?
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, cardinals and neon tetras, for example, normally about 4 weeks before anything happens, before anything is ready to rock and roll. There's some fish, glow light tetras, as an example, white clad mountain minnows, both of them are out the back at the moment. They're almost bulletproof and never anything happens to them. Most of the time it's just trying to grow them up a little bit bigger before they come in. Rams, I tend to sit on a little bit longer of all rams. They seem to be a little bit more finicky, particularly the Germans and the golds. So I normally sit on them for at least 4 weeks, sometimes a little bit longer, just to get them a bit more comfortable. But yeah, so some do take a bit longer. Clown loaches, dwarf chain loaches, in particular, both tend to come in with quite skinny. So the head's a little bit wider than the body. So that's a case of me trying to pump them up over a longer period of time. Sometimes they come in with internal parasites, so you've got to sort of deal with that as well. But yeah, so they do all take a little bit longer.
Okay.
Corridoras can often come in with little nubby noses, or often if one or two are dead in the bag, you're in for a bit of a fight to try and keep the rest of them alive.
Really?
So they can take you a little bit longer, yes. So if my understanding is they release some sort of a toxin, or some release some sort of a toxin into the water that basically kickstarts a death roll for all of them. So when that happens...
Brian mentioned something about his corridoras.
Yeah.
It's worth mentioning.
Yeah, and that's a really fair call. If you get them past a couple months, they're normally okay. I think it's a huge stress thing. There's a lot of them stuck in a big bag. Like, so they release the toxins, and once one or two go, that's kind of them. Panda corridors are particularly bad for it. They're stupidly sensitive. So I still haven't worked out that. I would hate to give everybody the number that I've died between buying and not even able to sell over the last 18 months or so. Like, it's a horrendous number, to the point where was getting to, like, if I managed to keep one or two out of a bag alive, I'll put them aside. So I've got a small group of 6 or 7 that I'm going to try and spawn from at some point, as if so I don't have to continue to bring them in, because it was just a horrific amount that were, and I couldn't work out why. So
I remember.
Cool fish, but super sensitive. Yeah. So yeah, there definitely is some that need to be up in quarantine for a little bit longer, and I'm aware of which, so they just get kept at the back for a little bit longer. Does sometimes hinder the flow of fish coming in and fish coming out, but that's part of it. So yeah, just noticed that Rochelle had a wee question up here. We'll just go back to that. This one here. Yeah. So in my personal opinion, I think that everybody who is getting new fish should be quarantining new fish, no matter where they're coming from, for a minimum of 2 weeks. It's really simple to do at home. All you need is essentially a glass box, a filter, and a heater, sort of thing. So it's pretty simple to do. The issue with it is either having your filter always running to make sure it's cycled the entire time, or having it clean between fish purchases, because, like we all know as hobbyists, sometimes we'll go to the fish shop 2 or 3 times a week and, oh, I like this fish and I'll buy that, and you've just taken another one out of quarantine, sort of thing. So it might be moving things through. But it's as simple as just a glass box with a filter on it, essentially, and a heater if you need to.
The one way you can do it to keep it running is to put some plants in and maybe some snails. And that keeps it all ticking over. And obviously, you got to be careful on what medication you're putting in when you've got snails. Obviously, copper-based medication is no good, but having the plants in there, it can help. Just optimum for any fish that needs either a hospital bank or.
A lot of people with sumps will also put a bunch of sponge filters into the sump. As long as the water's flowing through them, they've got bacteria in them, so you can sort of rotate one in and out. In theory, once something is totally bone dry, no bacteria is going to, good, bad pathogens in theory should be able to survive if it's a waterborne pathogen or what have you, and then it's being totally dry. Of course, it's quite difficult to get the inside of a sponge filter totally dry, but that's the way some people do that as well. Also, replacement sponges are fairly cheap for sponge filters, so you can use one throwing out. So when you get them home, it's all about monitoring them. I've found that a combination of really, really good food, normally high quality things like live brine shrimp, white worms, that sort of stuff, a combination of that and really clean water is enough to knock out most stress from fish. But then you're just monitoring them to make sure there's nothing going on with them. And as soon as you do notice something, if you notice something, getting on top of that as fast as possible. So, yes, and sometimes just the extra addition of some decent live foods enough to bulk them up a little bit and sometimes get fish out of their funk and away they go. So, yeah, it's definitely something I think should be encouraged. A hospital tank, I believe, is a little bit different. I personally think that because when you're treating fish in like a hospital type situation, you're medicating and that you're normally doing lots of water changes because you either need to for the medication or because you need to for the sake of the fish. I don't think you actually need a filter running on that. A simple air pump with an air stone should be enough to run that. If you can use some of the water that they've already come from as opposed to fresh tap water, that's going to go a long way as well. But like take tonic, for example, I think it's the third day you do a 25% water change, and then the seventh day you do a 50%. No, it's 50% and then 25%. Anyway, you're doing water changes all the way through. And, if we're talking a 20-litre tank with one fish this big in it, it's not going to produce a heck of a lot of ammonia in that time as long as you're not super duper feeding them. And when you're doing all those water changes, it shouldn't matter too much anyway. So I don't think most hospital tanks require a filter for when you're trying to do the hospital, but an air stone is pretty much all you need for that. So it's a slightly different situation.
Mm-hmm.
Hope that helped clear that up a little bit. So just cool. So once they're in here and once we've begun with that, again, I'm monitoring and feeding some pretty good food. Once the fish get out of there, 2, 3, 4 week, tank gets cleared, we just mark it off with a big cross with a vivid so we know which tank it is, and then do a 100% water change and clean out the sponge filter. So when they're in the quarantine, if it's only a 2-week quarantine, we don't do any water changes on them at all. We just leave them for those 2 weeks in stable water. Don't fiddle around with anything. Part of that is not wanting to go from hose to hose to hose to possibly pass anything around. And the other part of it is just to make sure the water is nice and stable. If things happen, so we begin having mass deaths or something along those lines, then we'll use water changes, and I'll just make sure the hoses stay above and the nets stay above that tank. But it's all about minimal hands in there, minimal stuff going in the tanks for that period of time, and just trying to optimize what they're eating and minimize the stress for them as well and stuff like that.
Yeah, a lot of people actually do away with lights in hospital tanks as well, but it's not needed. And having lights off completely can help reduce stress.
Yeah, for sure. There's a bit of a known thing. You eat your fish, you turn your lights off when you introduce them. I think that's more of a marine thing, but it minimises the stress.
Yeah, coral, definitely.
Yeah, cyclic keepers do the same thing. They'll turn the lights off with new fish, rearrange everything to try and minimise the stress and let the new inhabitants get through without too much drama. So I think in quarantining situation, light is really important. Unfortunately, I'm very minimal with the amount of light that I have. So I've only got a couple of things that I move around every couple of days just to keep my eyes on things. At some point, we'll have lights going over top of everything. But for now, that's all we're kind of doing.
Mm-hmm.
That totally depends on the fish and totally depends on the tank that you put them in. It's a little bit of a loaded question. I've got chili raspora that came in and they still haven't moved away from the back of the filter. It's been about a week now. I had glow light tetras that came in the week before last, and within 15 seconds they were buzzing around and everything was fine. So depends on the fish and depends on the tank situation, I think, a little bit too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can always tell when a fish starts to settle in.
Yeah.
Its colour comes back, its fins come out, and
they're buzzing around and looking like they should be looking. So
yeah.
It's just Red Laser was talking about wild caught. I had a really interesting conversation with one of the importers after speaking to Ty last week regarding imported fish and wild caught and stuff like that. And I found out that Harlequin raspora are all wild caught, which I didn't know.
No, I thought they were farm bred.
I would have thought they were too, but he was basically saying they're so plentiful in the wild. It's just not making any dent at all on the numbers of them. So they're all wild caught and they just can't produce enough to keep up with demand and that sort of stuff. So that blew my mind. Yeah. Other rasporas are tank bred, but the Harlequins are wild caught. So I thought it was really interesting.
There you go.
And so with wild caught, like you were saying before, the clown loaches and like dwarf chain loaches and stuff like that, they're all wild caught, which is why often they come in skinning with parasites and stuff like that, because they're wild caught animals and they need that more time and stuff put onto them. So yeah.
The wild caught, the clown loaches are wild caught as well, the majority of them.
Yeah. So I believe there is people breeding them, and at a wholesale level, but not enough to supply like the global market sort of scenario. So there's not very many people breeding them, but they definitely are. But yeah, so yeah, be cool if that could become a commercial market. Well, I guess
it's all commercially bred.
Yeah,
and just leave nature as it's intended.
Yeah, so that's basically what we do with the fish we get in. When they're here, they have a massive diet of live food, particularly brine shrimp and rapashi for the first little while. I don't like normally doing it, but I do preemptively treat with flubendazole into the rapashi with any of the new fish that come in. Probably don't need to, but I do it anyway. And it goes against sort of all the advice that I tell other people not to do it. But yeah, I do treat with fluben into the rapashi, as well as putting things like garlic guard and like the spirulinas and zooplanktons and all that kind of stuff into the mixture, just to really try and bulk them up a little bit. And then after the first week, I start putting them onto pellets, normally the Sierra insect pellet, because I can buy it in bulk. I really like it, and I really like the insect content. And again, that just helps spur them all along. And then at the moment, I'm using the Sierra Flora, which is the vegetable flake. I would like to be moving on to a slightly different vegetable flake, but I can't get in a bigger container. So again, that's all about giving them a crumble on a pellet, because that's what's most likely they're going to be fed when they get home to hobbyists. So it's just trying to make sure they're aware of what is a food for when they get home. So yeah. So that's the feeding regime, the water changing regime. Yeah.
Cam was asking something about garlic earlier on. I think we missed it. I got him in the chat, but he was asking if garlic is effective.
Yeah, I believe so. I think we base a lot of human research on what we do with keeping our animals, and you know, garlic is going to be ridiculously good for building immunity, ridiculously good for keeping away illness and that sort of stuff. It's also a really good appetite increaser for fish that are eating as well. There's a smell in it or a taste or something like that. So yeah, I think garlic is worthwhile. Adding it to it, you don't need a lot of like garlic guard, for example, or you could probably make your own garlic infused garlic guard if you wanted to do that. But I do think it is a little bonus to put in as well for the immunity and just for general health. I think I've been told, or I've read somewhere, that people feed garlic to keep white spot away or to cure white spot. I'm not entirely sure.
Well, I mean, I think that where fish are concerned, the real benefit is it increases their appetite on fish that normally wouldn't eat when they're unwell. So that then makes them stronger. It just gives them a better energy to fight whatever's going on. So
that's my understanding of it as well. And I think it does help. Again, based on human thing, that does help the immunity somewhat as well. So banana stuff. What banana stuff are you talking about? I was going to use the banana stuff. You haven't told me about any banana stuff. Good question. I've never tried to just float a piece of garlic in a tank.
I think it's too strong.
I suspect it possibly will be too strong. I don't know how they'd go about eating raw garlic if they were to start nibbling away at it, which I'm sure they would as well.
Have you tried eating raw garlic before?
I have. I really, really like garlic. I don't really, really like raw garlic.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
My daughter eats it raw. I don't know why, but I can't stomach it at all.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I didn't know that was banana based. That's really interesting. Yeah, a couple of times. She likes raw onions and raw garlic. My old man can eat, just slightly off topic, my old man can eat raw onions like apples. So a story that my cousin tells me pretty much every time I catch up with him is one day he saw my dad and he made a bet with him that he couldn't eat raw onions. So my old man just sliced off the peel, just ate it like an apple. I thought that, he loves them.
I've seen that done once, but it was in a hypnosis show.
Yeah, yuck. No.
Just noise. My eyes are watering at the thought of
that. No, not for me. And it turns out I was the one that told Cam that entire set was made from banana. Good thing I remember everything that I say. Oh, there we go. Oh, I'll let you do it.
Double click.
Yeah. So there is our answer to the garlic.
Yeah, I thought that. I think the key when you're talking about giving garlic to fish is buying food that is already added to. I think it's so potent that to try and do it yourself, I don't know if there's a way of doing it by diluting oil or anything, but for me, I would rather just buy food that's got it in it.
Yeah, or you can get the like Seachem garlic guard, for example. You just soak the food into it. So there's a few options there. Yeah.
It may well make the fish fart.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what we do. That's why sometimes when you ask me to order in some fish, and then eventually a month later I say, hey, I've got your fish for you. So, I've already bought them. Well, that's why, because we get them in hold up and make sure everything's all tickety-boo before they go any further. Yeah. So that's basically it. Did you have any more prompting questions to bring up or had lined up, John?
That was it, really. You kind of dived into the when, the why, the how, and the who.
Yeah.
You've done all that yourself.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah. But I think for me, if I was faced with the choices between two fish shops, and one openly brought fish in and just put them straight out for sale, and another took time to care for the fish, I mean, I know where I would shop. But don't get me wrong. I mean, it's happened. You go into a fish shop and you're like,
you love it.
And then the stickers up there saying it's quarantine. It is frustrating, but I think the older and wiser you get, you realise that it's worth the wait. You can, I mean, if you've got a good relationship with your fish shop, I've seen me say, look, when they're ready, give me a shout. My name's on 2 or 3 there or whatever, and then they're fine. Yeah.
Like I've always got people that message me on a regular basis. What have you got sitting in quarantine at the moment? Anything interesting? Well, obviously they've been on the website. That's what we've got. Have you got anything coming through? Got this, and this. Cool. Let me know when it's ready, and I'll take a dozen or whatever sort of scenario. So that happens on a regular basis as well, which is often sometimes why there seems to be a lull between when we get our fish and when we get new fish in, because people have messaged me and they've sort of disappeared before they've been managed to get it into the shop floor, which is unfortunate for everybody, but the people that are getting the fish are happy with that. So I've tried to change the way that I order fish as well recently. Prior to this year, like last year, I was ordering big quantities a couple times a month. So basically, we're just filling it up, pushing it through, filling it up, pushing it through.
Yeah.
So like there was always large quantities of groups, sort of 50 to 40 to 50 of particular tetras, 20 to 30 corridors, all that. So those big numbers hanging through. I've tried to adjust that slightly. So I'm buying smaller numbers of smaller groups, but more regularly. So like every week I'm getting in a small box of fish with my plant order, for example. So like 20 tetras at a time, 20 cories at a time, that sort of stuff. So we can possibly push in less numbers in the quarantine, so it's less stressful for the fish, less numbers in the main sales tank, so it's less stressful for the fish, and also less blockages on the way through as well. If something goes wrong with something, there's less tanks that are being held up.
Yeah.
So far that feels like it's working more efficiently for me. Unfortunately, I think it means that we're not able to offer quite as many fish at each time, because like yesterday, for example, I sold out of blue emperor tetras. So I only bought in 15 and sold all of them in one go, which is great because someone's bought a good number of them.
Yeah.
If someone came in later in the afternoon asking for some, which we'd sold out of, normally if we'd bought in sort of 30 or 40, we would have had more. So it kind of hinders that side of it a little bit as well. So I don't think I've quite perfected that system, but it's working slightly better for me at this end. The flip side is
finding a balance between making sure the fish are coming through safe, and having as many different kinds of fish as possible.
Yeah.
And then again, we covered this in a previous live stream, that having too many different kinds of species can be overwhelming for people that come in and they don't know what they're looking for. Too many to pick from. Whereas if you can streamline to some extent, it makes it easier, and you can focus on the health of the fish better and so much.
So I really want to only have one species of fish per tank out in the quarantine. Like, if I have to, I'll put 2 species that have come from the same supplier at the same time, because they're all in the same water. But I prefer to keep it one each thing, which means like if something gets sick, or for example, like the gold shellies are spawning, so they're holding up a tank, and I got a whole bunch of honey gouramis, and so they're holding up a tank. It sort of just blocks off a little bit of the flow. So now that we've had a wee bit of movement out the back, I'm going to be able to clear a few tanks out of the way and put a whole bunch more quarantine tanks in there. So I'm hoping to increase that capacity by almost double, which then should hopefully not hinder the flow too much, which means I can still get smaller amounts of more fish, but have more sort of rolling through.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So it's just balancing what we need out there to what's coming through here, what's possibly being held up, and all that kind of stuff. So
just when you mentioned gouramis there, Stacey had asked a question about moonlight gouramis. I'll just pop that up and you can have a look. Yeah. What's the biggest you've seen in a home aquarium or in your shop?
I've never seen a super big one.
No.
I've never seen one in a home hobbyist tank, other than sort of photos, but never in person.
Yeah, I think the biggest I've seen has been about maybe 12 mil.
12 mil?
Yeah.
Like that big?
Oh, no, wait a minute. Sorry, I'm thinking of sparkling gouramis. Sorry, Stacey. So what would you say is an average size then, Cam?
Not sure. I haven't really spent enough time with them to do with that. Up until probably the last year or so, gouramis have never been a fish that I've been overly interested in. Other than chocolate gouramis, which I absolutely adore, always have and always will. All the other ones have never really interested me that much. So, and then I started getting interested in the sparkling gouramis, and then the honey dwarf gouramis, and then that was my kind of interest in gouramis have come in from there. So I've never personally kept moonlight gouramis. I don't think I've ever stocked moonlight gouramis.
I think moonlight gouramis are quite like your normal standard gourami in size generally. 15, 16 centimetres is about the biggest you'll see on average. But there's always the exception to the rule. So, I mean, maybe 18, 19 centimetres, a really old, well-fed, healthy fish isn't out of the question, but certainly the average for the normal hobbyist is probably between 12 and 15 centimetres.
I'll tell you a gourami that I absolutely love, but I don't think should be in the hobby, and that's the pink giant gouramis.
Oh, yeah.
They are so cool, but I just don't think they should be anywhere near the hobby. Yeah, or even bigger.
Yeah.
They are monsters, and they're really cool. They've got so much personality. I looked after one for a friend for a little while, and it was just a beast. It was cool, but I don't think they should be anywhere near the hobby because they're just ginormous fish.
I know. They keep them at my local sea life centre.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they keep them in beside Paku, which I don't really I mean, they look good together, but they're not really the same kind of fish by any means, but same kind of size, absolute water beasts.
Where are we going with? Breeding Pistogramma fasciata. What can I do to prepare it? I would try and keep it in dark tinted water. I think they do best as a harem. Is that the right word I'm after? A male and a couple of females, or a male and a few females? Yep, as opposed to a pair. Feed them up on lots of good quality live food is always going to go a long way. There's a common thought that feeding brine shrimp goes a long way because the small amount of food hanging around makes the adult think you're coming into rainy season and all the small fish, all the insects and stuff like that are going to be prominent to feed for their things. So I'd feed on live food and just try and give them the most closest water conditions that they want. Set up a couple of caves. Do I have two things to show something? So if we're imagining this as an aquarium, one cave pointing this way and another cave on the other side of it pointing that way. So if the male comes out of one cave and the female's hanging around at the other cave, she can kind of dart away and the male doesn't realize she's there, sort of thing. From my understanding, works really well with the pistogrammas, slightly different angles of the caves. So nothing's both pointing the same way or pointing in or pointing away. Minimizes stress and optimizes the chance of a spawn because there's more ability to move away if required. I suspect that leaves would go really well in that tank as well. Somewhere for the fry to hide when you get fry, and to chew on little microorganisms and stuff like that, but also they can sort of dart in and out of it as well, again, feeling protected. So I think that might be a good option if you're looking at playing around with Trifasciatus.
Yeah. You had much experience with bumblebee gobies?
No, never even. I them once years ago, but I've never kept them.
I've had them once or twice, but I've never had much success from them.
Yeah,
I think the key, you need to have like crushed coral.
Yeah.
For the substrate, but just to keep that consistent. I mean, they say they're brackish, but everybody I've spoke to, I mean, Scotland's got soft water, but enough, just adding, instead of using soil or normal sand, using that crushed coral as a substrate is enough to buffer the water.
Yeah.
They're lovely little fish, but I think freshwater water changes, but just with the kind of crushed coral substrate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything that's kind of brackish type wanting. I'm not brackish or saltwater. I've never really been overly interested in keeping. I like to keep my life really, really simple. And if that involves me having to make up water or particularly salt water, I'm not generally interested too much to an extent. Not saying that saltwater fish aren't lovely and not that some brackish fish are lovely. I would always like the molos. I think they're a really cool fish. If I was ever going to get into that, I think molos would be where I would probably start with because I think they're awesome. But it's not really for the best part something I'm interested in, other than like trying to unlock the key to what's going on with mollies. So yeah. On that note, I got some absolutely amazing mollies in this week. Some stunning Dalmatian mollies and some stunning gold mollies.
Nice.
I was going to push them through to the shop, but I might end up keeping them and spawning from them because they are absolutely phenomenal looking fish. So
I was actually looking at for my daughter's fish tank some solid gold guppies, long fin.
Yeah.
They're not cheap. I mean, they're over here. They're £29 for the pair, which isn't a bad investment because you don't get them in the shops. And they're called 24 carat guppies. So I don't know much about them. I've never seen them, but I'm going to get them and just let them breathe away and see what they come out. But they look absolutely stunning.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've recently, or maybe we were talking about it, or I saw maybe Premier Aquatics said they had solid gold or 24 karat gold guppies or something like that.
Yeah,
I've
quite possibly.
seen them recently. Oh, they were quite nice looking fish. So
Yeah.
So,
Well, I was actually going to stop in and see Premier Aquatics earlier on in the week. I was travelling back up from London, but I was just too tired. It was just a nightmare of a day. But by the time I got there, it was past closing time.
yeah. So herd mollies, and that's his jam. So then, what sort of mollies do you have? What sort of mollies are available where you are? We are a little bit limited to what we get. Golds, Dalmatians, reds come through quite often. Clearly the blacks, silver mollies, which I think are actually really, really nice. And then obviously you get your high fins and your leer tails, but there's not too many other varieties that generally come through as far as mollies go here. I might be wrong. Well, they had some green ones come through a little while ago, but they weren't. They weren't green. They weren't green mollies at all. And Cam's just distracted me again talking about rumours. This one's really easy to answer because I actually don't have an aquarium at home. So none of them are in my home aquarium. I did go through a period where quite regularly I'd bring fish home. Autolampricus were one that I bought some in for the shop and I ended up bringing them home. That's definitely happened. There's been plenty of fancy plecos groups that I bought them for the shop that I've bought home.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of fish sitting at the back that I bought them for the shop that I've decided to keep for either spawning from or for display. The Sunset Platies is a good example of that. I bought them quite a long time ago and I'm going to put them in the shop as a display because I absolutely love them. And the Sunset Guppies, the Koi Guppies and the Leopard Tails all came into the shop too, and the Whites all came into the facility or the building to sell them to the shop. But as soon as I saw them, I was like, no, I've got to keep them because I need to spawn from them and I need to be putting numbers of them out on a regular basis. So none make it home because I don't have an aquarium at home at the moment, but plenty of hitch to ride and been kept out the back for a little bit longer, that's for sure.
Do you guys get mud skippers in the trade over there?
They used to be here. I believe, if I remember rightly, Ryan, who we had on about a year ago, he had mud skippers once, if I remember rightly. So I think they used to be here. I don't know if they are here now or not. Yeah.
They come out of the trade every now and then over here, and I think they would be an immense setup to have. But you need to have obviously the right kind of setup. You don't want it just to be a half-filled tank because then you'll get the condensation. You won't benefit. So you want I don't know how you would have it, shallow but wide enough for them to not be able to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen people hand feeding them and everything.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'd just like to address Cameron's little rumour that he's decided to start. So after being up in Auckland and seeing Cam's arowana and the Asian arowanas in the Auckland Zoo and the Asian arowanas that Ronnie had at Mupapuki Aquarium Centre, I was like, oh man, I really like these. Maybe I can get one of these. So I may or may not have been asking Cameron his opinions on aquarium sizes for them. Unfortunately, I don't have a tank big enough for them to house them long term, so I'm not going to be probably getting an Asian arowana as much as I think it'd be awesome. I don't think I can give them the long-term care requirements that it needs for me to purchase one. So at this point, I'm not getting an Asian arowana, but I would really, really like one. So
what colour would you go for?
I haven't got that far yet because I've just been looking at tank requirements and all that kind of stuff. I do like the purple ones. I think they're quite cool.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's probably not going to happen. But thank you for making that rumour mill go round and round in circles, Cam. What else we got? Helen said that she had mud skippers.
Yeah, she was getting them to spawn but couldn't get them to hatch.
Yeah. So they definitely were here. I don't know if they're still here or if they've been recently imported or anything like that. I don't know if they're still on our available list or anything like that. So yeah.
Is it something you get native in your estuaries?
Not that I'm aware of. Again, I'm not that familiar when it comes to native fish. Big requirements are over what I'm prepared to put into it. And saying that, like, you can't clearly see behind my camera, but I'm looking out my window and there's a main highway there, and right beside that is like a coastal area. So I don't think so, but I might go for a walk one day and see if I see anything out there. I significantly don't think that we get them natively. Yeah.
Cool. You just don't get crabs either in the trade, like vampire crabs and stuff, do you?
No crabs, no shrimp. There's lots of stuff we don't get. There's lots of stuff we do get, which is really cool. But plenty of stuff we don't get. So yeah, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it is what it is. Yeah.
Just look at, I've got a tiny little celestial pearl, Daniel, just in the corner of the tank there. It must be like that size.
Man, I wish we could get them. They can't be bought in anymore.
No,
I believe that they are.
It was you. When I was in the fish shop, I seen them, and it was you that came in my mind. I'm like, I know that obviously we have this conversation quite regularly.
Yeah.
I bought them, but I wasn't paying attention when he was bagging them up. And when I got home, they were all like tiny. And the plan was to put them in beside my pea puffers. But I don't know what's happened. I'm not seeing any aggression towards them at all. I mean, they eat off the same pellet and things. It's not a predation thing, but I don't know. They're just so small, but beautiful at the same time.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, I've grave fears that they're going to die out in New Zealand, unfortunately. But
I know
it is what it is. It will happen if it happens. So yeah.
One day we'll get somebody that's willing to start up a breeding network.
Got to find them first.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Until then, we just have to deal with what we've got. So just is what it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I don't really have much more on our topic. If there's some other questions that people want to ask, I'm happy to sit here for a bit longer and do that. I've got plenty of time before the shop opens. Otherwise, I'm happy to disappear and continue to tinker around out the back. So I'd like to. I think I'm going to try spawning Prestella tetras for the first thing round, purely because from all accounts they're fairly easy to spawn, and I've never called myself a fish breeder, and I never will, but I'm having to try that. So
yeah, somebody once told me a fish show that they breed tetras all the time, and they just get small tank, like 20-litre, 30-litre tank. They put the fish in, and instead of putting substrate or mesh or anything like that, they just put about 2 inches worth of marbles in the bottom.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, so I've heard that as well. I actually tried making a wee spawning contraption a few months back, which I think will work as long as I can get it tight enough to the corner so the other fish can't get in. And that's how I managed to spawn the one and only zebra danio that was in the shop, that I sold, sorry. So basically just sat on a couple of plant pots with some PVC and had some mesh on top of it, so when the fish spawned, it dropped through. But unfortunately, the way that the PVC elbows work, it went out from the tank a little bit, so there's enough room for the fish to get down and either eat them or just get down underneath it. So, unfortunately, we'll see how we go, how we fiddle around. So, but yeah, Prestella's apparently really easy to do, and zebra danios. So, being that I've, like I said, other than like plecos and African cichlids, I've never really been interested in spawning anything. So it's not really my thing, but we've got the room, and that's part of the reason we moved here, to start fiddling around with playing with a few species. So I thought I'd start with Prostellas and Zebra Danios as a starter. So we've got some glow light Danios growing out for the same reason, and some glow light Tetras and some Ember Tetras as well, because apparently they're both relatively easy too. So if I can manage to get Prostellas and Zebra Danios, I'll fiddle around with a couple other things as well. But we'll see how we go.
Ember Tetras are gorgeous.
Oh, they're stunning fish. Yeah, I really like them.
When you set up, doesn't matter what setup you put them in. They're in black water, fully planted tank.
Yeah.
Listen, they just look amazing.
I think there might be a couple of different strains of them. Sometimes they are really, really orange and embery color. Other times they're a bit more washed out. I think I don't know if it's an environmental thing. I think it's more of a genetic thing. Some are just like that. Like, I've spoken to people and seen people say they've bought 2 or 3 different groups from different shops, and some of them just don't ever color up. So
some of them are more almost like a lemony color. If they're a different species, if they've been sourced originally from a different location, it's got slightly different flora.
Speaking of lemony things, I bought a group of Prostella Tetras from a breeder, a local breeder, and he caught a lemon tetra as a Prostella, which he didn't notice when he bought it, and I only noticed it after I emptied everything into the tank. So, I wonder if you get the yellow color from a lemon tetra onto the clear color of an X-ray tetra and see what that would look like. But yeah, I thought that would be quite cool if the Prostellas had a little bit more yellow, more color through the body as opposed to clear. But that kind of takes away from what they are as well. So
exactly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Cool.
Okay. Well, I'll let you get off then, Cam.
Yep.
Get back to work.
Yeah, work. So yeah.
It's 11 o'clock here, so
yeah. If you haven't yet, can you please like the thing?
Yeah.
Follow us and all that kind of stuff that I hate talking about. So always leave it to last. So do that likey thing and that sharey thing and stuff like that. But other than that, thank you everybody for joining us. Much appreciated. It's been a good time. And so next week, like I said, we've got a special guest with Dan coming on, and then the week after we'll try and John and I will come up with another topic, and we'll just continue to let these conversations go. So thank you everybody. Have a good one, team. Happy fish keeping. Catch you later. Enjoy your Friday and your Anzac Day.
Cheers. Bye.